Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It's a lovely day here in suburban Chicago, and I'm still walking home from the school where I dropped my kids off last episode. And I think I have time to record a second podcast, so that's what I'm gonna do. For my second podcast, I'm gonna dive back into the well, the most common type of episode on the show. Maybe every third episode is one of these. That's right, it's time for another mini review segment, Shooting from the Hip Triple Shot. Shooting from the Hip Triple Shot is a short review segment in which I talk about games that I've played for the first time or maybe the first and second time recently, and just give a first impressions of them. So, one more time, this is a first impressions review episode. So I will give you a general idea of my first thoughts on these new games that I tried, or new to me anyway, but I will not be giving in-depth reviews because I've only played them once or twice. So take all of this with a grain of salt. I have three games to talk about for you today. I have three games to talk about with you today, and I'm looking forward to talking about each one. The first game is a game called Transmission. I got to play Transmission because I borrowed it from a friend, and I'm looking forward to sharing what it was about. Transmission is like Scythe and, to a degree, Tapestry, based on a artist's work. So the story outlined in the rulebook is that the designers were really compelled by the work of the artist and tried to design a game that would fit all of these beautiful pieces of this art that this person made. The artist's name is Matt Dixon, and I would describe the style best as like cutesy robots in a steampunk destitute world long after humans have gone. So nature is infiltrating back into the world of pipes and machinery, and you have these cute little steampunk robots walking around doing stuff. So in Transmissions, I don't know what you're trying to do. You're trying to gain points by building up your robots, and the action system is really clever. So you have a number of cards, and on your turn, you're going to play a card, and you're going to use that card to activate one of the robots. And you move the robot based on either the card you played or the spot they were in. Well, it's always the card you played. So sometimes there's two types of cards. You have cards for specific robots, and you have cards for specific terrain types. There's 3 or 4 terrain types on the board, and the board is a rondel. There's a circle, and different spaces allow you to do different kinds of things. So when you play a card, you're going to move a robot either in the terrain type of the card you played, or you're going to move the specific robot whose card you played. And here's the really unique thing about the game. Each player has their own like dashboard type board with listings for all 4 robots, and each player has this hand of cards. So on your turn, you're going to move one of the robots. Then you get to do the thing that robot gets to do in that space, but you also get to activate any powers that you have for that robot. So this is the interesting part. Each person can control all 4 robots, and the programs that you put into place in your dashboard activate when you activate that robot. But you don't own that robot. On my turn, I can move that robot and activate the programs I've put into place for that robot. So really there's just sort of 4 shared movement pieces, and the piece you move, you get to do things based on what you've added to your board. Basically, when you add to your board, you can either add efficiency rule breakers, things that will get you more resources, let you move further, let you do something else, or you can add point scoring tiles, which don't add to your efficiency, but they do add to your points. And basically, the 4 different robots you have, there's different heights on each one on your player board. So everything that you buy is going to be tiles, and that will slot into one of the spots on your player board and thus take up room in your robot. And of course, once you've filled a robot up, you can't add any more things to that robot's plan. This is a cute game. It's relatively easy to teach. We played with my wife's mother, my wife and I, and my son. So 3 generations of players. We're all relatively experienced gamers. With my son having run a full campaign of Gloomhaven, and my mother-in-law playing all sorts of games, although generally not liking certain kinds of games. She thought this one was okay, although there was not as much interaction as she would have liked. Like I said, I thought this was a very cute game. It's gladly a game I would play again if people brought it out. And it's an excellent game for using with sort of mixed company of more experienced and less experienced gamers. Although I'm not sure I would call it a welcoming or gateway game. There's maybe one or too many things to keep track of for it to fit in that category, but it certainly could be second level game. And the art is gorgeous. The product design is really nice. The tiles are chunky. The game comes with these really well developed minis that look beautiful. They might even be highlight painted. I don't know what they call it, where they do like a wash on them. Anyway, looked really good and well worth trying out if you get the chance. That's Transmissions from designer Adam West, artist Matt Dillon, and there's a couple other people listed, but Matt Dillon is the one whose art is sort of most famous, I believe, and it's from Crosscut Games. All right, the second game I want to talk about, I got to try at Gen Con. It was the only game I played at Gen Con other than Bigfoot Roll and Smash. And I did not try it at a booth. I tried it because one of our friends bought it while we were there and we all tried it together. This is Draftosaurus, designed by Antoine Bauza and Corentin Lebras, with artists Jihui Ivan Gao, Vipin Alex Jacob, Roman Kacharsky, and Tansen Inc., published by, well, it says Economo and 16 more. I'm sure it's not Economo that he bought it from. I think we're looking at, I don't know who the American distributor is. Maybe Jelly Games? Anyway, in Draftosaurus, you are building a dinosaur park, not unlike Jurassic Park or something like that, thematically. And the way that you're doing that is you start by drawing out a handful of dinosaurs out of the bag, and then you're gonna take one and add it to your park and pass the rest to the next person. So it's like a Dino Meeple focused Seven Wonders style drafting game. So you're gonna draft a dinosaur, pass them, draft and pass them. So you never quite know what you're gonna get. When you take a dinosaur, you're gonna have to put it in one of 3 different areas on the park, which is determined by a card that gets flipped over or a die that gets rolled. And you get to choose that. You get to choose which dinosaur you're taking after you know which region you're gonna put the dinosaur in. And then on your park board, like I said, there are 3 different regions, and in each region there's like 2 different ways places to put a dinosaur and ways to score them. And it's a lot of the kinds of things you would expect for set collecting. There is one where if you have the most of these among the table, you get points. There's another one where you want as many of the same type as you can have. There's another one where you want all different ones. There's another one where, this one is actually pretty interesting. If you put a dino there, and then you take no more dinosaurs of that type for the rest of the game, then at the end, you get lots of extra points because you didn't take any dinosaurs of that type. There's a river where you throw dinosaurs that you're not able to put anywhere else, and a number of other things. You can never choose to throw a dinosaur in the river. If you can place it, you have to, which sometimes means, you put a dinosaur in the I don't want any dinos of this type spot, and then someone passes you a dino of that type, and it's the last hand or whatever. This was a fine one. I am happy to have played it, and it would definitely fall into if someone brings it out, I would play it again. I might even choose to play it if I was with a group and we were looking for something to play that people hadn't played, they wanted to try. It's a fulfilling middle level drafting game, not as complex as something like Seven Wonders or It's a Wonderful World. About the same level as Sushi Go, maybe one notch above that, but not really. I mean, Sushi Go is the same way. You have a bunch of different ways you can score. If anything, Sushi Go is more complicated because it doesn't show you how the things score when you're taking them. I think it does, actually, the cards say. But in this one, you have a board where you're putting stuff. It is a little more intense, though, because of the die rolling about where you're going to put your things. That part can make it really tricky to play things the way you want to. Overall, it's a fine game. Like I said, a nice medium weight game, worth trying if you get a chance. I'm not sure I wouldn't probably recommend buying it before you try it, unless you don't have a lot of medium weight games and you want something in the vein of a Sushi Go or somewhere halfway between Sushi Go and Seven Wonders to have in your collection for days when you feel like a drafting game. So that's Draftosaurus. The third game I want to talk about today is Planet Unknown. This was the much sought after hotness at Gen Con this year. Was the one where people were rushing to the booth to try to get it. I think the Kickstarter delivered shortly before Gen Con. It was designed by Ryan Lambert and Adam Rehberg. The artist is Yoma, who I believe is the same artist that did Legacies. I could be wrong on that, but maybe it's from Adam's Apple Games, which is, I believe this is their first game as a publisher. Yes, Yoma is the artist who did Legacies. So good for them with Planet Unknown. So in Planet Unknown is a tile laying game in which you are exploring you are in the outer space exploring a planet by dropping terraforming tiles on it, I believe. Or no, dropping building tiles. And the building tiles correspond to different types of terrain. So you need to put a water treatment plant on a place that takes water, or an energy plant in a place that has geothermal activity or something like that. I don't remember exactly the different types. But there are several different types of locations, and each one does a different thing. So when you play one type of location, it allows you to move your rovers around. When you take another location, it allows you to get energy tiles, and so on. And these different tiles then allow you to do different things, all in the service of gaining points. The main way that you get points is, or one of the main ways you get points is by completing most of your board. For every row and column that you complete, you get points, and the points vary by how long the row is. So the rows in the middle of the board, or the columns in the middle of the board, which are more spaces, get you more points, but of course they're harder to complete. You also need to clear these asteroids that have crashed, or meteors, and then you also need to clear these life pods, which represent like early settlement that have come down ahead of you. And you need to collect those before you put tiles on them. If you put tiles on them, they're eliminated, but then you don't score points for them at the end of the game. Any row or column where you still have one of these things, you can't score it. Although I don't think you could have a life pod in a column that you've completed and could potentially score, because you would have eliminated by dropping a tile on it. You collect the life pods and the asteroid craters with your rover, so that's how you accumulate those points or eliminate those things off the board. And then every time you place a tile, you move a cube up one of the tracks that is associated with that tile. Most tiles have two different terrain types on them, or activity types, and you move the tile up based on that activity type. As I'm thinking about it, I realize I did misspeak earlier. The only tiles where you have to pay attention to the landscape that you're covering are the water tiles, because the water tiles score if you put them. You can score the water part if you put them on a water tile, but you can't score the water part if you put them anywhere else. All the other things, the terrain is inconsequential, including putting it on a water area. That's fine. It's just the water ones only score if you put them on the water. But I haven't even explained how you get the tiles, and this is the part that has everybody going crazy. So the game comes with this big Lazy Susan that has cutouts where each of the different tile shapes is stored. And the Lazy Susan is divided into 6 pie pieces, and on your turn, you can turn the Lazy Susan however you'd like until you choose to lock it into place. Then when you lock it into place, you take one of the 2 tiles in the pie piece that's next to your selection area. So you have one spot on the Lazy Susan that you get to pick from, and on your turn you turn it until it gets to your spot, and you pick the tile that you want, one of the 2, either the bigger one or the smaller one. Then everybody else must take a tile from the spot where their pie piece is. So you get this interesting back and forth where you're setting other people up to get things as well as setting yourself up. I suppose some people probably in later games, when they're more into it, if they have a couple different things they could use, they probably set it so that the person who seems to be winning gets a bad choice. Our group was not that sophisticated as far as I know. Maybe the person whose game it was, who was on their 4th or 5th play, maybe they saw something coming. The game also adds in combos where when you advance up one of those tracks I mentioned, you sometimes get a bonus. And so the game rewards you for advancing on the tracks. You also have end game scoring that you're going for, where you compare your final map to the maps of the people on either side of you. And if you scored well or better than they did in some things, then you win, etc. I find the game really compelling. It was very interesting. I don't think it was compelling enough for me to go out and try to find a copy over the other games of the similar weight that I already have. You know, if I have a tile layer, I can play Isle of Cats. I find that really compelling. I can play Barren Park with one of the expansions, very compelling. So that part is not as significant to me. The Lazy Susan is really cool product design, and I think it gives this game a wow factor, and it creates a mechanism that really would be very difficult to do otherwise. I mean, you could do it in a similar way with just putting tiles around a board and positioning like a ring that turned around them. That would be easier maybe, but this really does make the play of the game much easier, and I think it's excellent. Really a neat idea, and congratulations to them on it. In terms of downside, there's not a lot I would point to as a downside. The tracks all feel very similar, and the in-game scoring conditions all feel very similar, even though they may be individually different. So there's an element of point salad to the game in the bad way, where it doesn't feel like it matters a lot what you do, so much as you make sure you're being productive every turn. That may be a first turn impression, and certainly the person who'd played before a lot won the game. So there is some skill to be developed as you play in recognizing the best way to achieve the efficiencies you need. Ultimately, it's not a game I'm super compelled to pursue, but I would happily play it whenever somebody gets it out, and I do recommend you give it a try. If nothing else, just because it's a neat play and a neat idea. My one big criticism is that we all are terraforming the same planet. They all have the same little number and the same map. Feels like that's a miss. I don't understand why they'd all be the same. Now, it's possible that the other side is different, that we played on the beginner side where they're all the same, and that playing on the other side they're all different, but I don't feel like the planet made enough difference to make it worth having all the same. I don't know why there wouldn't just be, there could be an easy side and a hard side if that's something they're able to evaluate, but I don't really see the point in making them all the same. In fact, it's kind of ruins the theme a little bit, because I don't know how you can be exploring and developing a planet, and I'm exploring and developing the same planet with the same map. It doesn't make sense. I guess if we're proposing a development plan, that we'd all work on the same map and whoever's plan was best would go, but that's not what the game narrative says we're doing, and it doesn't feel like that's what we're doing. So all in all, Planet Unknown, really interesting game. Definitely worth giving a try if you get a chance. So what new games have you played recently? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know in the comments there. You could also send me a direct message, wombat929 on Board Game Geek, or an email, brendan@rattleboxgames.com. It was delightful talking to you about the games, and I look forward to hearing what you've been playing and seeing you next time. Thanks for joining me on my walk today. And if your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.